Okay, and now on the next round, the tournament really started to heat up. So until this moment, it was like a good tournament. You drew one game below, you won the rest, and you drew one game up slightly above, with
Mhm.
many chances to win. And now this next game was completely like a turn the tables around in the tournament.
Yeah, yeah. So this was also a double round, and this was the round of the afternoon. So as in the third round, I couldn't really prepare too much. I saw he had played the Catalan in this tournament, and I thought I would play some sideline. So since I didn't have time to prepare, I would like to play some sideline, but not too sharp, something solid, but not too well known. So I went for this uh, a5, which is like an attempt, as far as I understand it, to play some closed Catalan with some advantages, with some space on the queen side, avoiding some problems black usually has. So he played queen c2, a4, continuing the plan, and he played in a very critical way because sometimes white plays slowly with rook d1 or something, and black can play c6, and it resembles a close Catalan. But he played in a very critical way, and I still knew up until this point I was supposed to take a knight d5 and bishop d2, and this is where my preparation ended. And this is also where it became started to become very, very interesting. So in this position, I already thought about ideas of playing b5, uh, and if it takes bishop a6, then the e2 pawn cannot be defended. But now it was not working because my rook is also pinned, so I can just take a4. But would be a good reason to show why I thought about that move also in the future. Because now I played 97, which is a natural developing move. Now I'm threatening b5, and he played e4, which was the natural move also to give the center. It seems like I'm giving the center. This is not very good for me, but it's also a bit concrete because now I play knight f6, and it's not very easy for him to defend the center without allowing counterplay. I can also play for c5 later on, and also for some b6, bishop a6, or b6, bishop b7, and the center is also not very stable. And my pawn on a4 is also very good. At some point it could go to a3, or it could be helped by the b pawn. Um, so he played knight c3, which I thought was not a good move at the time. I thought he missed my next move when he played knight c3, which was b5, which I could find this move because I already have thought about it in the previous. And I thought he missed this move because it feels like it looks like I'm just giving a pawn, but it's actually very difficult for him to take it, and it's very difficult for him to not take it also. If he goes back, for example, queen e2, I just win an exchange with b4 and bishop a6, or if he plays knight b5, then the knight will get trapped uh, with bishop a6 and eventually c6 or queen b8 or something. So he has to take it, or he could have actually play queen c6, but it's very scary also because the queen is almost trapped, and I can play something like knight b6, and I'm defend the rook and threaten bishop d7. He cannot take with the knight because he loses the knight to bishop d7, and he cannot take with the queen because he loses the rook on f1 to bishop a6, and it's yeah very scary for white here. So I thought he had to take the pawn, but now bishop a6, and despite having lost a pawn and I can't recover immediately, I didn't see a way for him to defend the knight on b5. So previously, before this, I thought I was just winning, but then he started to play really, really, really well. Uh, For example, he cannot play b3 because I can just go a3, for example, and he cannot put a pawn on a4 to defend the knight. So queen b8 is coming, or rook b8, and he's just losing a piece. But he decided very correctly to sacrifice the exchange with queen c6, queen b8. Now he has to play knight takes c7. Now there was two interesting decisions, to take the exchange or to play bishop b7 and try to win the knight on c7 with rook c8 next. And this was also very complex because he can drop back to c1, then bishop f4, then his position is hanging, rook c8, bishop f4. His position is hanging by a thread, but I didn't really see how to win because next move is also threatening a discovery on my queen. And I don't think I can win the knight, but it was really crazy position. But I thought taking the exchange was good, so no need to calculate further. And I thought the position would be good, because it doesn't have a good recapture, as if it takes with the king, there would be some queen b5 check down the line, and if it takes with the bishop, there would be some queen takes b2 threatening the rook. So he has to take with the rook, which is not a very happy move, as he would like to take with the bishop to defend the b5 square, because his knight on c7 is also kind of trapped, or it can be trapped in many lines. So first point, important point, is I cannot play rook c8 here. That would be a good move, but he can play queen takes a8, and he wins the exchange back. So rook a7 I have to do, and then I thought that he would just retreat with the knight, and I would knight b5, and I would play rook b7, and just be much better, with threats to take his queen side and to rook c8 and so on. But he surprised me with bishop f4, which was a very, very interesting move because he's walking into so many things. He's walking into knight h5, e5, g5. If I can deflect his bishop, I win the knight on c7. On the other hand, he also has some very interesting creative idea against any of them, and he always is saving it. So I played queen d7, queen b7, which I thought was safe and good, because I didn't really consider his next move also. I thought we would just eventually trade queens and I would be an exchange for a pawn and just at least slight advantage, probably more than that. But he played, again, really interesting move, d5. And this was a crazy move for me to face because I had already only like 20 minutes and I didn't expect the move. And it looks like he's walking into e5, into g5 again, into knight h5, because the knight on c7 is hanging. And it's also very difficult. Then I didn't know which move to calculate. But he has always an interesting sacrifice everywhere, and it just gets the central pawns. So eventually I couldn't find anything, and I made the decision to kind of try to bail out to a simpler position where I thought it would be simpler to play, but it just turned out to be not a very good position and actually a difficult position. Probably here I should play g5, but
Wow.
yeah, I was scared of some sacrifices, because the point is he cannot take, as he will lose another piece and he will be a rook down.
There's so many things to consider. Like, it's very
Yeah,
difficult to come up with such a move. Of course, it makes sense, but it's very difficult. I mean, first of all, you can take, of course. But then there's counterattacks, right? Like, you can take and go d6. You can take on e6.
yeah, there
Maybe
is
some
many
random knight b5.
possibilities. But knight b5 was the one, yeah, I was scared of, because he cannot take on g5 as he will lose the c7 knight. But knight b5 is very interesting, because if I take the bishop, then he will take my rook and get a lot of pawns in the center, like d6, e5, gf4, something like that. And my knights are very bad. He doesn't even have to play e5 right away, but like my pieces are bad in general. So I thought he had compensation. Yeah, I am a piece up, but my pieces are all very bad. But what then I thought was very interesting was knight b5, rook c8. And I thought at first, okay, I'm winning here. But then I saw knight takes a7, uh, rook takes c6, knight takes c6, gf4, knight e7. And this position was so crazy. Like, I don't know. Somehow in my calculations, ed5 were already included. So he had this f5 square for the knight after. And I even checked it with the computer after the game, and it gives just like 0.6 for black. Because like his central pawns are very, very good. He's playing d6, rook c1, rook c8. The position is also very dangerous for me. So yeah, it was probably the right decision objectively, but also very difficult. He played just really, really well the middle game and just outplayed me, to be honest. So I played e5. The idea was to simplify into the ending that we got, more or less, which was this. And now knight d7 was the idea. And then he cannot leave with the bishop, as he will lose the c7 knight if he goes to f4, g5. So yeah, I saw his idea was at some point to play d6 intermediate, and then we will get this ending where is I'm exchange up, but he has 2 pawns and 2 bishops, which honestly I thought it would be slightly worse for me, but then or maybe in the beginning I thought it would be equal, but then when I reached this position, I just realized it is just worse, and probably much worse if he stabilizes the position. So bishop d8, I will win that pawn, but the bishops are really strong, and he played a very nice move here, which was e5 instead of taking back, and he immediately gives his bishop space into the game. So rook a7, dc7, bishop c7. So until this point was just a very complicated position, but then suddenly we got a more clarified ending. And in this position, we had already very few time. Like he had like 10 minutes, I had like 2 minutes or something. And we only get more time in move 40. So we played basically this game in like it was a faster time control, and here it was like I think the deciding part of the game, the deciding move, because I thought he would play just a3 and just stabilize the position, and he has a long-term advantage basically. It's difficult initially for him to make progress and make a pass pawn, but long term the position is very difficult to play also for black, because white is very solid. I have nothing to attack, my rooks can't do much, and he will eventually improve his
The
position.
bishop pair is very strong here. But he played
Yeah,
this rook d1, allowing this a3, right?
and now suddenly I was very happy with my position, because now my moves are very easy. Like, I don't know about the concrete evaluation when I was playing, but my moves are very easy, and I can put pressure uh, uh, very concretely, because now he cannot stabilize. And he played this king f1, which was a bit weird, but I thought at that point, after a3, his best chance was already to try to make a draw with something like ba3, rook c3, rook d7, rook check, bishop f1, and try to hold this position, which is probably not a very difficult draw if white wants, because he has a lot of pawns. I only have 3 pawns. I will probably eat his queen side with rook a1 or something, but it would probably just be a very easy draw. But I don't think white can play for more here anymore. But then he started to bring the king, and I kept the pressure on his queen side, and now it's already very difficult to play. Probably again he has to play ba3, but he played rook d2, which is the most normal move in the position, to be honest. But I had seen that by it's like a very specific concrete move, but I thought it was just winning, which is knight b6, because now I'm threatening knight c4, I'm threatening knight a4, and he can never take the pawn because his bishop is hanging, and I thought he would just lose the queen side, the pawn on b2, and it would just collapse. I don't know if here he could...
And that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, and that's what happened. Probably only move to save the game was rook d4 to prevent the knight jumps. But it was not a very easy move with little time, and it just collapsed. Yeah, with this bishop d5, which loses to rook d7, and it just loses a whole rook. Then,
But the game was still interesting. At least
yeah,
he thought so.
yeah, and you should think the game ended there, and then it got very scary. No, if you put the initial position, the pawn was on a2. When I gained the rook, the pawn was on a2, and somehow the pawn reached a7. No,
I mean, yeah, but
yeah, in time trouble, anything can really happen. But yeah, it was always winning because I can keep cut this king, and then just go for the king side with my king and take the pawns, and he can never make progress. But it was a bit scary in the end still.
oh, on to the next game. We're playing at 2600.
Yeah, I was playing Pranav. At first, I was a bit upset with the pairings, but then in the end, it turned out to be a great pairing because I needed a GM in the end. So I played. I saw he played always Narsdorf, so that's what I prepared. I was surprised in the opening. He played Sveshnikov. I thought maybe he had seen my first game, so I thought I would play just something different, and I played a bit a more solid line with bishop g5, and then it was just mainline theory of the Sveshnikov up until this point, bishop g5, where I knew the best for white is always to go along this g3 h4 bishop h3 plan. But I decided to, since he for sure knew all the theory there and I didn't, I decided to keep it more simple and play something more natural to me, which was, just to castle, then queen d3, rook d1. We got to this position where suddenly I started to realize it was not so easy to play for black, because f5, that is the usual counterplay, is now blocked by my bishop on h3. That's why I played bishop g4. And so I thought the position was easier at this point to play white. Probably should have done something earlier, more precise, I don't know. Then I played g3, which is a cool move to give my bishop to g2 square, but also hint at some f4 possibly in the future. It started to expand with a5, because black doesn't have really a lot to do. His queen is like trapped, because usually the queen would like to go to like c5, but the knight and the bishop are like completely controlling the queen, so he cannot put the rook on d8, for example, in the future, because he can't live with the queen. So I played a5. There I had a good chance with knight a3 that I missed, which should be a good move, because it's difficult for him to defend the queen side. without allowing my knight to improve to c4 or b5. But okay, I missed this chance. I was also trying to play fast because I felt at some point he was trying to flag me. He was playing very quickly. Then he played 97, okay, normal. I played 93, the typical move. Yeah, and now again, I felt during the game he didn't quite have a plan, so he started to make a lot of quick moves as I was getting low on time, and it just improved his bishop. I think he was hoping for me to play f4 at some point, and then his bishop on g7 would be good because it would have a lot of potential on the dark squares. But I was very proud of the plan I found here, which is to play on the queen side and just try to create a pass pawn and basically play against this dark squared bishop. So I played b4, he played bishop g7 quickly, and c4, which I thought was a very, very important move. As now I felt during the game I was just better. Because I will create a pass pawn and this bishop is dominated and it cannot create counterplay. Bishop c6 was the move I was expecting, and now knight c3. And then I am attacking a lot of pawns. I'm attacking d6, b5, so he has to take on c4. And this, I would say, was maybe the only critical move of the game on my part, because of course when I have thought about this before, my idea was to play queen takes c4, but then in this position I started to think, and you know the 2600 effect started to kick in, and I saw bishop e8 or takes on b4 first, sorry. Takes bishop e8, and then I thought, okay, b5. Of course, I knew position was good for me because like these pieces are kind of dominated. But I started to think f5. Okay, he will attack me. He will push every pawn. He will mate me at some point. And then I thought, what if I could have this position without the queens? Of course, my intuition was telling me queen c4 was the best move, but yeah, I started to get scared, and then I thought queen takes d6, and he will play the same endgame, but without the queens, because I considered only queen takes d6, rook takes d6, a b4, and bishop somewhere, and I thought, okay, practically the same ending, but without the queens. Maybe it's not so much as with the queens on the board, because the c4 pawn is still there, but it's a safe advantage. I can play rook b1, I can play push the pawn, I can put the knight on d5. Okay, it's a safe advantage. Not much counterplay for black, but of course what I completely missed, which basically ends the game, is that queen b6, which I saw, but I thought the queen has to keep contact with the bishop on c6, so I could take on a5. And if queen a6, which was the only move I considered, I would just win with bishop d7. And yeah, now he cannot defend the bishop, or he has to play bishop b7, and then it's just a very bad ending for him. But of course, what I missed is like he can take the pawn and attack my knight as well, and then the game is immediately just a draw. Which, if you'd say to me before the game that would be the results, of course I would not be sad or anything. I would be very happy. But yeah, it was kind of a missed chance because the position didn't have much risk, and it was just slightly too much more easy to play for white. And yeah, it was a very good game so far from my part, with only one really bad decision.
Okay, now for the next game, is this the 7th round or 8th?
This is the 8th round.
Yeah, so the penultimate round, and you still needed a win at this point to be in the GM Norm contention, and you're playing Jan Klimkowski, who I believe was one of the seconds for the Gukash match, right? One of those guys in the Polish team. And yeah, take us through the game.
Yeah, so here that's where I kind of started believing that I could play for Norm. Of course, I already said before it was not one of my even it didn't even cross my mind before the time. But here I kind of started believing, although yeah, not very much to be honest. But as I was told, I needed 1.5 out of 2, and certainly I would need the win to beat this game so I could get a GM on the last round. So I prepared some sharp stuff to play, but then he played C4, which was a surprise because he mainly plays E4 and D4. So I didn't prepare C4. So over the board, I thought, okay, I would just play some sharp line, probably with some F5, and well, we'll see what happens now. If I lose, I lose. I had nothing to lose basically. So yeah, I just played some sharp line. It's just like some reversed Grand Prix. And yeah, we got to this position where I didn't remember anything about this. And it felt really uncomfortable over the board because he's just playing b5, rook b1 very quickly, and I cannot develop, and I cannot attack on the king side. I don't have time. And he played this bishop a3, which was very interesting. And at this moment, the position was very uncomfortable because I cannot develop my b8 knight. If I play knight b to d7, which would be the desirable move, he plays knight h4, and he attacks the c6 pawn as well as threatens knight g6, winning the bishop pair, which I cannot give because his a3 pawn is so his a3 bishop is so strong. So this position would really be very bad for me. So this position was already very difficult. So I had to find some, some creative ideas, some idea to put the game into messy waters. So I played queen e5, which was connected to like a kind of pawn sacrifice idea, because now I saw he has two options. I thought queen a4 was even stronger, which was what he played, but queen c1 was what I considered most. And I have the same problems, knight bd7, knight h4, and I cannot develop my knight. But my idea was actually to play knight bd7, then knight h4, and just king h7. And this was kind of desperation, but also I thought it was very interesting because it takes the pawn, and then rook b8 was my intention first, and then rook fc8, and then suddenly I get some very quick play against the c file and against these pieces with e4, d5 at some point, knight e5. He probably has to retreat to the bishop because the bishop is not very well placed there. Then I can play some rook fc8. Then I am threatening e4 because his knight on h4 is also threatened with some g5. And I thought I would get some very concrete compensation because his pieces are not very good. He cannot move the queen as he will lose the bishop. Moving the bishop on a3 would be hit with d5, and black is immediately very well. And he cannot really move too much, so I thought this would give me compensation, although I was not so sure. But it was interesting. But he didn't went there. He went to a more safe and, to be honest, just cleaner path because white is, I suppose, just better. And now also I have to find some idea because if I play knight bd7, I had the same problem with knight h4, and it just threatens the c6 pawn and knight g6. So I found this idea that if the a file opens, he has some problems because he has two pieces on the a file. So I found this, which I thought it was a good resource, which was knight d7, knight b6. which I think he missed, um, because now he has to retreat. Otherwise, he wouldn't have played rook ab1, I think, because if he takes, then I take back, and the a file opens, so he doesn't have time to capture the b6 pawn as his bishop is hit. And I am suddenly, okay, so he has to retreat. And now I kind of have the same problem. If I move the knight, knight h4, which was actually the game. But the point is that at least now the b file is closed. So I put the knight on f6, on b6, which was a big improvement. But now my idea was actually knight h4 was the move I expected, because if I take on h4, then it takes back, and I cannot defend both d6 and c6. So I'm just losing a pawn, and probably even more later on, as his bishops are very strong. So my idea was rook fc8. Knight g6 was the critical move, although since he didn't play it instantly, I started to look for other things, and bishop h3 was also very interesting. But here, knight g6, my idea was to play bishop f6. And I thought he couldn't take on d6, because then king f7, and his knight will get trapped, because I can place e4 and attack his c3 knight, and I'm also threatening g5, threatening the knight. So this was my idea in playing rook fc8, and I thought it was working, and he cannot go there, because of course if I have to play something like king f7 against knight g6, rook fc8, knight g6, king f7, if I have to play something like this, I'm just much worse, and it's a very sad position. Both his bishops are perfectly placed. I have lots of weak pawns, and I have no counterplay whatsoever. So it's just a very sad position, probably positionally lost long term, I would say. But okay, I think the idea of bishop f6 was good, and he also probably liked it. So he played bishop h3, which is also very interesting because it puts a lot of pressure, and he forces me to take on h4. And now I have to play d5 also, which this was the move which I think he completely missed, because d5 looks like it just gives away the game to c5, and the knight doesn't have any squares, and if I play d4, it just takes and is threatening a fork with b7. But yeah, I saw I could just take back on b6, and both his knight and bishop are attacked. So also probably black is winning now, because I will get back the piece, and my structure is very good, and I will win some pawns. So yeah, this would be a very good position, which I think it was what he missed, because it just looked like this and I played d5. And yeah, so he then continued with cd5. Now, yeah, I had two options. I was not sure what was best, if taking with the knight, but then I was afraid the c6 pawn would become a weakness, but then taking with the pawn would give the b5 square. So yeah, I was not sure, but I eventually had to decide before losing on time to make a move. And I decided I would keep my pawn structure in the center, which could be good, and then try to place for some d4, knight b5. Here he played rook bc1, which surprises me. I was expecting more rook fc1. I don't know if there's a lot of difference, but it made more sense to me. But also knight b5 was critical, and I just thought, okay, I will play rook c2, and yeah, we'll see what happens. I am threatening a lot of pawns. This knight is jumping to d6 in some lines. It's just a mess, and I was not sure. I had no time to be sure also. But okay, played rook bc1, which I thought it was less critical because I can put my knight on d5. And suddenly I started to have lots of threats, like d4, knight b5, knight d5. And now I'm threatening in some positions to play just knight f4, threatening the bishop and the rook with double attack on e2. And also in some positions just attacking his knight on b5 and put my knight on c3. And yeah, here I had some very good prospects. I thought I was no longer worst for sure. When we entered the end game, I thought I was worst for sure, but now not anymore. And I thought I could even have some chances with my knight jumping and my pawn structure so good. But he played bishop g2, rook b8, and he just took it, which initially I thought was heading to some draw because the game is simplifying and the pawns are disappearing. But then I started to get hopeful when he played this rook c7 because I thought knight f5, knight takes f5, bishop e6, for example, and knight gets back, r2 e7, r2 d6, and then it's just r2 g3 or wherever, and then okay, I was a bit hopeful with the a pawn, but not and the the h4 pawn, but not much. Okay, I thought it would just be probably equal. But okay, then he played rook c7, which is a sensible move. No, he activates the rook, and it attacks the knight, the pawn, and it seems he will get a pawn. But suddenly his last rank, his back rank, is very weak. So now I realize bishop e6, and I'm probably just much better because if he
Yeah, I
takes
was watching this live, and yeah, I thought it was probably gonna be a draw somewhere, but maybe he was trying to play for more or something. I don't know, but the ending part in this game, in my opinion, it's really beautiful. I think this is my favorite game from your tournament, and yeah, the you'll see, but White's king will be like a huge issue. It doesn't look so bad right now, but it will be. And it was just really pretty the way like your pieces moved around his king and created threats.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, here I started realizing he had problems in the back rank. And I played, yeah, he played f3, which the idea is he cannot take a7, which is probably what he missed.
Mm-hmm.
Or he can, but it's not good because I give a check and rook e1, and suddenly he loses his e-pawn. So yeah, he played f3, so he has the f2 square for the king, and
In hindsight, like a f4 would have given me
yeah,
more space, but
f4 would
it's
be
hard
better. Yeah?
to foresee what will happen.
Yeah, and then I realized suddenly that I have a mating idea. So first I played a5, which the computer criticizes because it realizes the mating idea. But I only consider that my opponent will play rook a7 because it's the most natural move going after the pawn. But then my idea was that I can play the same thing, but better, because his rook will leave the 7th rank eventually. Or will not be attacking my pawn by the side. So rook b1 check, king f2, and now f4 is probably or surely what he missed. And it's a very unusual, I would say, mating pattern, because if he takes the pawn, now bishop h3, and it's just unstoppable, mate. Like the f4 pawn just leaves the king like caged, and he has no way of stopping the mate. And to be honest, when I played this f4 and this is starting looking very upset, I thought just it was unstoppable, mate. Or you would have to give a lot of material, but he just found a brilliant idea.
Yeah. This idea was crazy. I thought he was going to collapse for sure.
Yeah.
Um,
And
and
he just
indeed,
calculated for like 4 minutes and then played every move at touch. I didn't realize what was happening, and it was brilliant idea. Yeah.
Rook e1, forcing king f2. Now the rook
And
comes
then I
to
attacked the
e1.
bishop.
And
Yeah,
now this bishop b4 is incredible with the idea bishop f3,
yeah.
bishop e1.
It didn't
Yeah,
even cross my
this
mind,
was
and
really resourceful. But
yeah,
still, his bishop is stuck there, just a4, and now we have a passed pawn, so still great chances to win.
yeah. And I thought it had to be completely winning because now, like, he can never move his bishop.
Mm-hmm.
I am a pawn up, and yeah, I thought it would be like, for example, some a3, a2, bishop e6, and then move the rook or something. It would just promote a pawn, or I would create some mating attack, for example, just getting my knight closer to the king. But then I was realizing it's not very easy because, for example, if my knight reaches d1 with a check, then he plays king g1 and I can't see a mate. Uh, if I move my knight back, then he goes to the king, goes to f2 again. So I started thinking a lot. I played some moves to reach the time control, which felt natural. G6.
Apparently, the computer said this g6 was really important, that you should have played something else. But
Yeah,
I
apparently it
mean,
was blunder.
it's like the
Actually,
typical details that
yeah,
it's not really important in time trouble.
yeah. Actually, I was really surprised when I checked the game with the computer because I thought it was winning. It was always winning throughout, and my opponent thought the same. But apparently not. There was like 2 or 3 moments where it was not winning. But okay, I played these
Okay,
moves, and then
finally we reached time control.
yeah, we reached time control. And at this point, I started to think, how can I win the game? Um, because his bishop is stuck. I have a passed pawn. I am material up. I thought it should be winning. And the idea I saw to win was to put the bishop back on h3. And then the only pattern I could find, okay, I saw I could bring the king to the queen side, but I was not so sure. But the pattern I saw was put the pawn on h4 and put the knight on g3.
Yeah,
And
this is
then
incredible.
I would threaten knight h1 with mate because then I take the bishop. And if he takes, pawn takes, it's also checkmate
Yeah, let
immediately.
me show this. So just some random moves for white. Whatever. Yeah, for example, this, right? Something like this. I mean, this was
Yeah.
almost the game, and
Mm.
this mate in the end is so beautiful, with the knight in the corner. It's
Yeah.
really incredible. It's really
But it's,
remarkable. This thing somehow, like the rook and the bishop and the knight are so uncoordinated, and
yeah.
that's what it makes it really beautiful. I think really special.
Yeah, and also the impressive thing is that it is the only square on the board that the knight can give a check to the king and still attack the bishop with the rook.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the way I found it because I was looking how can I make him leave the bishop, and the only square was h1. So yeah, but
Okay, so he gave a check. King e7,
but
knight c4.
okay, that was the idea, but it was really difficult to do because he was putting so much problems with just the rook and the knight, which was unbelievable. Like he was defending so well. Because if he does nothing, this knight a5 was very good idea because it looks like he's just letting me advance my pawn, but then he plays knight b3. Uh, it's important to point out, by the way, that he can never play knight b3 without me playing a3, because if king c8 I played, for example, if knight b3, I take his bishop,
Mm-hmm.
which is important. Um, Otherwise, knight b3 would probably be a good move, and then this ending is just winning. But then, yeah, he started to put a lot of problems. He played knight c6. I was not sure what to do because now I can't move my knights. If I play bishop e6 at some point, then I'm getting mated, which is incredible. Bishop e6, bishop a5, and it's checkmate, but for white.
Wow.
And yeah, So I still needed to be careful as he coordinates these pieces very, very, very well. Um, but I played a3, and the point of a3 was to like make his pieces leave my king, and then I could execute my plan. I was willing to sacrifice this pawn because if his knight has to go to a3, then I can execute my plan without any problems.
He probably missed this idea as well, right? Like his, I mean, he was
Yeah, I
also in
think
time
so.
travel, but his next move was this rook a5. Maybe he could have sensed something when you played h4 because it's a really random move, but it's it's very hard to consider as well.
Yeah, it is. He probably thought it was just like a winning time move
Mm-hmm.
without compromising the position. Um, but yeah, or maybe he saw it and it just didn't see how to avoid it. I also didn't see how to avoid.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but okay, Rook A5. This move he played with seconds also. Um, Now Knight F6. And he found this really great idea of perpetual check, also common team, which was to play rook e7 next, like knight h5, rook e7. But unfortunately, it doesn't work.
So let's say
But
like he takes, for example, something.
yeah, but now if he takes, I play just a2.
Mm-hmm.
He has to go back
And then again,
knight
some knight
h5.
h5, right?
Yeah, yeah, and now knight h5.
Yeah, this is very nice. And if you take something like rook e1,
Yeah, and I'm
the
threatening unstoppable mate, actually.
mm-hmm.
On f1. Or he has to take the rook and I make a queen. Um, yeah, this was the
He
idea.
played this, and he has some ideas. It's still not a perpetual, right?
Yeah, I thought not, but apparently my next move was a blunder, which was actually my idea. Um, I checked it after with the computer, but it didn't even cross my mind. I'm actually not even remembering why it was a blunder.
Yeah. So he tried to set up the perpetual because now after rook e7, if
Yeah,
it's white to move, he gets the perpetual.
yeah. So if
But
I play knight g3,
apparently, best is knight e7. So you have to go here, 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 and now I guess rook a8 somehow. I'm not sure. Rook a8, take the pawn with check, but then what?
yeah, I don't remember, but it had something to deal with. I couldn't at some point go with the king. I thought I couldn't go with the king to f8 because of some bishop b4 check.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but I can't remember. Maybe it was not knight c6 check. Could it be that? Uh, Unlikely.
What about this? No, but then there's mate on f1.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was like really some perfect construction. I don't know.
Let me see if I can just find it. Oh, because it's still a draw. That's incredible. Knight g6,
Yeah, it was knight g6.
threatening
Yeah.
threatening what?
I have no idea. Yeah, but knight g3
Oh wow,
was.
threatening this perpetual, right? With knight g3, bishop a5, and now he gets the construction with this knight
No,
e7.
now it's mate. Now it's mate.
Oh, it's even made on c7. It's not even a perpetual. Yeah,
Yeah, but this is knight g6
knight g6 is wow.
it's unbelievable.
That
Yeah,
would have been a perfect defense for like a perfect attack because the knight, it's so random. It's so random. The knight is just moving away from the king. It's so weird. But he's also attacking
yeah,
this. So like black sort of has to go into that. There's nothing. I mean you could definitely play on, but he'll take on h4.
yeah. But I think the main point is just to leave the space for the bishop,
Mm-hmm.
because on if he goes to c6, then the only check he has is rook e7, and then he doesn't have a check with the bishop.
Also, it
And
stops king e8 also sort of magically because now the knight takes away
yeah,
this square.
yeah, that's the point. Yeah, because his bishop has no real power on b4, but it has power on a5.
So instead,
Yeah.
rook e7, trying to set up the perpetual naturally.
Yeah, now knight g3 would be a blunder because it would be an immediate draw.
So bishop d7, apparently this is a blunder as well. Of course,
This was winning. I think this was a blunder because there was something even stronger. But this I think it was winning if I remember correctly. It was like +3. So
yeah, I guess Rook C1 is cleaner, but probably doesn't make a difference.
yeah,
But yeah, knight b4, and now finally we get to see the idea. He could have allowed
yeah,
the checkmate. Knight c2, Rook c1.
yeah. He was too upset for it.
And he resigns exactly on move 50. If he takes, oh, this is, I need to see this again. Oh, but now it's not like we need to. I mean, I guess we get the bishop, but do we just have time for this, right? We can just do this.
Yeah.
I guess it's like knight c2. It's not so clean. It's not the same clean mate, but we get all the pieces like.
Yeah, but this was still mate actually. Yeah, I think because knight c2 I take, and he cannot take as it's this exactly same mate, because then I go rook c1. Yeah.
Yeah, this was a beautiful game. And I think there were a lot of moments where he was completely surprised, I think, even without looking at him. There were a lot of moments that like White is sort of trying to do something. For example, this f3 is completely, and then, you know, a5, rook a7. I mean, he's completely oblivious to what you're going to do. You can tell, like.
Yeah. It's for sure one of the proudest game, one of the most proud games for me.
Okay, on to the next, the final round. So we only needed a draw in this one, and I was following this game closely, as probably many people like in the chess world in Portugal were doing, and it was really nerve-wracking. I mean, it was a huge fight. For a long time, you were lost, and then you found this incredible resource to make a draw, and that's why we are making this video.
Yeah. So first, I was very grateful that I get this pairing, because the only way I could even fight for a GM norm was if I would get a GM in the last round, and that's what I got. So yeah, I needed a draw to make the norm. So yeah, he played a lot of things. So I just thought I would play something normal and try to take it from there. And a funny moment was I was like in move 8 or 7 or something, and the other Portuguese who was also playing for an arm, which was Pedro Gil, was playing with white against a 2400 player, and he needed a draw on me. And I went to his board, and there was no pieces. Like, it just exchanged everything in like, I don't know, 15 minutes. It looked like it just brought a vacuum cleaner to the board. And I just remember thinking, I was just like so envious. I was looking at the position, and I was just like, I want that on my board. Because there was just like no pieces, just like rooks left, and it was like an easy draw.
I think it's funny. Like we've played like the Caracan so many times, like me with the black pieces, and there was a long period of time where you always went for this line with d3. We had like some theoretical battles here, and I just think it's funny that you played this against me for a win, and then in the game in your life that you most need a draw, you play something else instead of this boring endgame.
Yeah, actually, I thought a long time about playing d3 when I played the Caracan, which he hadn't in this tournament. But then I thought he would just keep the queens, and this would be a bit more solid, this exchange with a concrete idea. And okay, I think I got a very easy position from the opening. Probably slightly better, but not very difficult to play. But then I was just outplayed in the middle game. I thought, because like this position exactly, when I played knight b3, I thought I was just slightly better, and knight b3, he has to play knight e4, knight d2, and since I was slightly better, I only considered he would play knight c5 and repeat. Uh, because I thought it was worse feedback. He would want to repeat, but it took on d2, and just the position is probably slightly better for white, but I just got outplayed. Um, he was just better than me in this position, and then a very tough and long defense was ahead, which, fortunately, uh, it ended up being done.
Yeah, here
But yeah,
there were these moments where the computer was pointing out b4 is very strong. Yeah, we put all the pawns on the square of the collar of the bishop, which is a bit weird. But basically, black runs out
yeah,
of ideas. Basically, that's it.
yeah, for
Um,
sure. I was afraid of only the a file, and also I was afraid that instead of a5, if he plays some f6 and trades the bishops, then the c3 pawn will be very weak, and I won't have any possibilities of playing c4 to just fizzle out.
mhm.
And, but of course that's nothing to be scared of. But then he played b4, and from then on it was just a better position for black. Here I had to really try to defend, try to block the passed pawn, to avoid these infiltrations. And they played this very interesting move, rook d8, which I wasn't expecting at first, because it looks like he's trading the advantage he has, the pawn, but concretely his pieces are so much more active.
Yeah, here I thought his idea was this rook c8 thing, and then he has some ideas with a5, and this is
Yeah,
dangerous. I think black gets the pawn, the passed pawn, but there's still chances to draw. But black just gets that clean pawn.
yeah, yeah, perhaps. What I missed actually was like some rook c8. I can never play queen b3, because I thought, okay, he trades the queens, he goes to the rook endgame, I put the rook behind, and his king is like boxed in, so he can never win. But of course, he doesn't do any of this. He takes with the check on c5, uh, and he keeps the queens.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it probably is just not very difficult to win after that, because he has both threats of advancing the a-pawn, and he can conjugate that with threats against my king with the queen and rook, and it's undefendable, bro. Yeah, rook c8 was more precise perhaps, but this was also very scary, and this was what I thought he would go to. The important moment was this h3, which I thought, I see computers saying complete blunder, but I thought it was a cool defensive move, because if it takes on e5, I have some ideas later on to place the queen on a1 and pin his pieces. For
Oh,
example, if c6, then if he plays, or for example, if
something
it's
like this, right?
yeah, or if it's my turn, I play queen a8 and queen a1, and then rook c1. Uh, this may be here. Yes, e5. I
Yeah.
don't know. But if he places the queen on c7, he has other problems like queen b7, and he cannot really trade. Uh, yeah, but he didn't take. He played well. Rook c4, queen d6 was a good, nice move. Also, I'm threatening mate, but he can play king g7, and I can never enter with the rook because I get checkmated first. Okay, the important part here is he can never trade rooks, as even if I lose my e5 pawn, the c pawn will be enough to make a draw in a queen ending, as often the passed pawns are more important than the quantity of pawns. But with rooks and queens, it's just very, very difficult to defend because my king is so weak. Um, But okay, I think I found this nice move, Queen e7 against Queen e4. And the point is, he can never take the e5 pawn. Because I play Rook f1, suddenly I'm not getting mated on g2, and I have lots of counterplay. And probably this would be enough to make a draw. I guess maybe King h6 is still interesting for black, but okay, I don't know. Queen takes f7, probably it's a draw. With correct play, his king now is also weak. And during the game, I thought Queen d5 would paralyze me. Because I can't move the rook, I get checkmated. I can't move the king, it takes with the check. I can't really move the king side pawns. So, but then I saw c6, which was a cool defensive idea. As if he takes with the queen, I give a perpetual check because I get access to the d8 square, and it's a perpetual. And if he takes with the rook, the same idea appears with this. Yeah, he could go there,
Yeah, I
but
guess on f8 we go here and just take this.
yeah, I take the pawn, and yeah, I can't really be worse, I think.
No, actually, sorry, this, right? Yeah.
Yeah, but he can go king e8. I will have to
So
take it
this.
eventually, I think. And king
Yeah,
d7.
but it's
Rook
it's
d1
just
is
a draw
tricky.
immediately, right? Because if you take on h7, maybe there's still a game, maybe.
Yeah, yeah. But okay, this will give me
And
very
if he
good
takes
chance
with the
to play.
rook, it's rook
Then rook
f1.
f1,
Yeah,
and
and he
it's the
cannot
same idea.
defend f7.
So he cannot take, basically, and if he cannot take, my pawn reaches c7, and then, yeah, I have probably very good chances to draw. Um, but yeah, this position was very tough. I thought it should increase the pressure somehow. But actually, during the game, the move I was calculating, we were both slow on time. But the most tempting move for sure was g5, because my king is almost mated. So this was the move I was calculating while he was thinking, because he had just 10 minutes and I had like one. So he had a lot of time. And I was calculating because he can just mate me if he plays g4. If it's his turn and he plays g4, it's just um, uh, very dangerous, because he then takes on h3 and queen h4 appears and so on. So I played c6. I think this saves the game because the pawn gets closer to promotion, and when he plays g4, I can play queen d8 or queen e7. Actually, I think they are similar, and I have some perpetual ideas. But also, since the pawn is closer to promotion, the queen exchange is not very favorable for him. For example, if he tries to avoid queen g5 with queen f5, he even loses to queen f6 check, and then rook c1, and the pawn just promotes. So it's difficult for him to stop queen g5, and I also can play queen h4 if he does nothing and attack the rook and the pawn.
Can
So
he go for some h6 or something?
yeah, I play queen h4,
Queen h4, yeah.
attack the rook, and I think I'm in time to save the game, because if the rook leaves the f file, also queen f6 is there.
I was thinking about this line, just a random thought. Pawn takes, and if you queen, we get mated, right? With h, no, probably. But I was
Yeah,
thinking
yeah, well,
about this.
we would get mated.
Mm-hmm.
This,
This probably wins. Unless it's a perpetual, which it is, right?
yeah, this is a perpetual. Yeah.
King
Huh?
h2.
Queen h4.
Yeah, it's a perpetual because then the queen attacks the rook. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So
he.
but
He
this
took on
would also be
h3.
good. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He took an h3, and this allows queen g5, and I thought it was an immediate draw. Like, I thought this was a draw because he could never change queens, because I would play rook c1 and promote. So here I suddenly was very happy, because a few moves before I thought it was a very good chance I would lose the game. And suddenly, yeah, I saw queen g6 and I was shocked because I thought just takes rook c1 and I make a queen. But then I saw his idea when he played it actually on, which was to take with the f pawn, and he's still fighting for the win because the rook reaches the last rank. So rook c1 I have to play, otherwise rook c2 and I lose. Actually, important king h2. Just funny thought would lose to rook f1. So yeah, never too late to blunder. He cannot play rook f1 as he would leave the king would not be able to stop the pawn. So he has to play rook f8, c7, rook c8, king takes g2, and now I am one pawn down, but I have this very, very good c7 pawn, which I thought for sure would allow me to have probably to be probably a draw. But yeah, of course, I was still scared. Um, uh, I also considered instead of c7 to play rook d1, and I was not sure whether that was better or not to just to put the rook on d7 and the pawn on c7 instead of the rook behind. I was not sure what was best because I want to play rook d7 and c7 and try to defend like that. I was not sure. But okay, then I saw I should go to the king as fast as possible and activate the king. As you said before, activity is often the most important principle because I can also play instead of king f4, I can play rook c6 and be greedy, like don't give him my pawn. And he plays king d7 and I play rook d6. And when he takes, I take e6. But then it's like, of course, this should be draw too, but my king is further. So if he can bring his king closer now, the e-pawn won't count for much, and these two connected passers can win the game. So I thought the best policy would be to just try to be as active as possible. And if I could reach with the king to f6, I would make a draw. And actually, the position we will have in the game is similar to this one, but my king is on e6 instead of my rook. So yeah, I think it was the correct decision. King f4, and now king g5, rook c7, rook h1. Important that he cannot go king c6 and activate the king, because I can play just rook c1 check, and he can never leave the rook. If he goes king b6, I will just check him forever. And so he has to go back, and I will go back. And here, due to the activity of my pieces, I think it's just a draw despite the pawn down and the connected passers. And I think the rest of the game was played correctly, as far as as far as I know.
Yeah, a well fought draw to earn a well fought norm, and yeah, what to say, man? This was an incredible tournament with some amazing victories, and yeah, my favorite was for sure the game against Klimkowski. That was just beautiful, with lots and lots of ideas, which is really something that we don't see very often, at least in our own games. Like games that have so many different ideas. Usually, one or two ideas decide the game, right? But having so many ideas back to back, it's really awesome. And yeah, in the next month, we will be playing in Grenke in Germany. So another tournament, and it's nearby. So maybe you still have some vibes from this tournament there. And we've played that tournament last year as well. We witnessed the greatest of all time make the 9 out of 9. That was absolutely legendary. And we almost got a photo with him, but he
Almost.
he ran away. He escaped. Maybe this year if he goes to the same restaurant. And yeah, it's been a pleasure to have you here, and thank you for commentating on your games. And yeah, I'll see you tomorrow to play paddle.
Yeah, thank you for all your support. It was a pleasure to be here.